Hey there in YouTube land, and tonight is the start of something I'm going to do off and on. If you've noticed recently, I've been trying to do kind of little segments. I've got adventures in B movies. Last night I started my pretty much my Jello reviews, which is reviews in black gloves. And tonight I'm going to start one that I hope you guys are going to enjoy. And this is going to be my review, which is kind of like an ode to Canon pictures. Every once in a while I'm going to come on and I'm going to review a Canon film. If you're not sure what a Canon film is, it's definitely something to Google. They were a really big company back in the day. If you grew up in the day that I did, with going to the the video stores and renting movies, especially if you grew up with VHS, you probably rented a lot of Canon films. They had a lot of the real classic action movies, kind of like different, really cool Twitter exploitation-y stuff. So just to give you an idea, I brought up Canon up here on my screen, so I'm going to read out, before I do the review, just a few of Canon's films that I've gotten on over the years. There's a lot of these that real film collectors out there have been looking to get for a long, long time. And every time that a Canon film comes out, it's a big deal for us. When Exterminator came out, anytime a film like that comes out, we kind of get excited. And that's because Canon was one of the companies that we grew up on. It literally was one of those, you think of Anchor Bay now and Scream Factory and all that. Well, back then it wasn't like this. They weren't putting out movies that were well, there were people putting out classic movies and stuff like that. Universal put out their library and all that stuff, but you could rely on certain companies to give you the type of entertainment that you wanted back in that age. Now, Canon started back out in 1967, so obviously there's a lot of early stuff. They did movies like Inga, To Ingrid My Love, Lisa, some Swedish ones that were done. Crucible of Horror was by them. They did The Happy Hooker, and they also did, I think The Happy Hooker Goes to Washington. Yeah, they did both of those. We got like the cheesy exploitation at the time with Gas Pump Girls, and Happy Hooker Goes Hollywood. There we go. But they also got into this really cool stuff. Schizoid, Enter the Ninja, New Year's Evil, Hospital Massacre, Death Wish 2, Lady Chatterley's Lover, The Last American Virgin, The Treasure of the Four Crowns, 10 to Midnight. Great movie, by the way. I really love 10 to Midnight. Revenge of the Ninja. Cheesy Hercules film. House of Long Shadows. Making the Grade, which is what I'm going to talk about tonight. Exterminator 2, Ninja 3, The Domination. Breaking 2, Electric Boogaloo. These people were so popular with a lot of the movies that they made that there's a documentary out there now that I would love. I would kill to have the documentary. Unfortunately, I don't have it, and I have no access to it around here. But, or the funds until after Christmas anyway. But there's a Canon documentary, and it's actually called Electric Boogaloo. And Electric Boogaloo was the name for a movie called Breakin' 2. And I come from the 80s, so yes, I was one of those people that danced and propped and locked and all that stuff back in the day. Movies like Company Wolves, American Ninja, Invasion USA, The Naked Cage, America 3000, Avenging Force, Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2, they put that out. American Ninja 2, The Confrontation, Superman 4, The Quest for Peace. I also had the rights to Spider-Man, but it was so tangled up that he could never get the movie made. I've actually read a couple of the spec scripts that were floated around. They're out there online for Spider-Man, and we're probably better off, but I don't know what John Carpenter was thinking, or James Cameron, when they wrote the script to Spider-Man and Professor Octopus. But anyway, they went on from doing like a bunch of Chuck Norris movies. And what was their last? And their last movie was a direct-to-video movie called Chain of Command. And just before that, they did movies like American Ninja 5. And they'd done a lot of this type of movie. And even to the end, they were doing the cheesy stuff that everybody kind of liked. So what are we talking about tonight? We're talking about a 1984 film that I absolutely adored back in the day. Do I still like it now? Well, we're going to find out. It's a movie called Making the Grade, and it starred Judd Nelson. This was one of Judd Nelson's first roles. Also had I can't say a cameo appearance, but it was a fairly decent appearance by Andrew Dice Clay, who had been in a movie before, but this was his first time actually playing the Dice Man character that he would become famous for, and would later on, in the late 80s, early 90s, would basically sell out stadiums that only rock groups ever sold out before with his stand-up routine. People forget nowadays exactly how much of a force Andrew Dice Clay was back in the heyday. He was the guy to beat. He was the one. He was up as far as they could go. And we'll get into Adventures in Fort Fairlane some other time. But I will let you know right now that I dig that flick. I digged a lot. Making the Grade is about a guy named Palmer who is a screw up. He's pretty much had everything handed to him, and he takes advantage of all that. He's rich. He's a horrible golfer. He has a girlfriend named Muffy because preppy. And he just wants to slack off and do stuff and not have to worry about all the conventions of like living life, going to school. At this point, he's flunked out so many times now that he's going to be older than some of the teachers soon. So this is his last chance. He has to go to this all-boys school to graduate. And if he doesn't graduate, everything's cut off. No allowance, no trust fund, no nothing. And Palmer cannot live without a trust fund. He is definitely one of those trust fund kids. So what does he do? Well, at the same time, there's a guy named Eddie Keaton, played by Judd Nelson. And Judd Nelson is running away from the Dice Man's guys. The Dice Man's book, and he owes him $3,700. So needless to say, they're getting ready to break his legs when he kind of escapes from them and goes into a golf course. And goes into a golf course and runs into Palmer, who basically needs somebody, since nobody has seen him at the academy, and his parents aren't going to come and visit him because they have their own little world of their own. They're not exactly the model parents. Eddie can actually take over and just do Palmer's school year for him. If he does that, he gets $10,000 and a red Porsche, which Palmer doesn't really like that much anyway because he's got a few cars. So Eddie goes in and tries to be Palmer. He doesn't really try at first to be Palmer. He actually pretty much is Eddie, and he's a nice guy. He picks up for his friend that he has there, the one that's taking care of him, the only one that knows their secret. He stops. He breakdances in a big breakdancing scene because breakdancing was huge at this time. Don't judge us. Breakdancing was a huge thing, and eventually he actually does start to fit in, and it changes his personality a bit. The Dice Man shows up and puts the screws to him to actually make sure that he finishes. And he tells him, I know you're going to get $10,000 for this. I'll let you have $50 once this is all done because I'm taking the money. Along the way, we meet like some great characters. We meet Dan Schneider, actually. I think this is Head of the Class. I'm guessing not a lot of you are going to know what the show is when I say Head of the Class, but it was a big show back in the day. It starred Howard Hessman. Well, later the series would be taken over by Billy Connolly. It was about these genius level students and these teachers that were basically trying to teach them not to take themselves too seriously and to have fun with it as a world changed around them. Way much more fun than I made it sound right there. Dan Snyder would later go on and become very famous because he would become a producer of a lot of shows for Nickelodeon and for Disney. So a lot of the stuff that you probably watched, the Bond Show and all that stuff when you were growing up, if you're one of the younger set, it was produced by Dan Snyder. He had been a child actor, and he kind of wanted to utilize other child actors and hopefully make sure that they could make decent programming for kids and not go off the track. Unfortunately, that didn't always work out because some stars become famous fast. Anyway, you have the coach, who's a really nice guy there. Coach doesn't really fit in. He's kind of like Eddie. He doesn't fit in because he's not the in shape coach. He's not the he's like he's got girls. We see him with prostitutes. He watches porn with them. He's just a kind of a fun guy, and he kind of takes to Eddie pretty fast, and Eddie takes to him because they kind of know that neither one of them fit in. Anyway, and after a while, Palmer shows up. We're going to get spoilery here, and a little bit. And actually, Eddie starts to take on more Palmer characteristics than actually not more Biff, who's the bully type character. Yeah, because perfect Biff. He falls for a girl, and he feels that he's got to change the way he is to get the girl to like him. And anybody that's watched any of these movies knows that the reason the girl liked him in the first place is because, well, he was different from everybody else. And then all of a sudden, he's becoming like them. So, how's the movie overall? Well, the movie ends happy and predictably. And it's not a bad thing. It's like I say, when I was talking about Arrow to a couple friends of mine. They said, it was kind of predictable who the man in the yellow suit turned out to be. I said, yes, but predictable is not always a bad thing if it's done well. And that was done well. And so was this. It was a fun movie. They actually had planned to do a sequel called Turistas. However, the movie did not perform at the box office the way that it had intended to. So they never did get to make that second film, which is a real shame because the character of Eddie Keaton was actually a very fun character. Now, this is not a groundbreaking movie or anything like that, but it's a fun hour and a half. I mean, for me anyway, it takes me back to my 80s roots and my childhood and just makes me happy. It's one of those movies that just makes me happy to be watching it. Canon Films, you did a great job. You put out all kinds of action and exploitation, anything that a teen boy or girl wanted to see at the time. We got to watch movies like Delta Force and Delta Force 2 and Delta Force 3 and Lambada, The Forbidden Dance. A bunch of Chuck Norris movies. You gave us Quatsi for crying out loud. And all the Death Wish films. And a bunch of Michael Dudikoff films, usually under the name American Ninja. Thanks for watching. Let me know if you're a fan of Canon Films and what kind of film you'd like to see released. For me, my personal favorite that I want to see Scream or Arrow put out is Dangerously Close. Dangerously Close is a movie that I remember watching when I was young, have not seen it since VHS, and would kill to watch that movie again. And I want to see it on Blu-ray, though. I really want to see this one done well. Dangerously Close was one of those films that struck a chord with me. For me right now, I like a lot of my films from the 80s and stuff like that I watch. I remember watching Porky's 2 and all those films, Last American Virgin. But I have another thing, aside from the nostalgic factor. They also have the music, the 80s soundtrack. And being a fan of the music from that era, that is just, it's great when I can turn it on. I mean, like, when I was watching Making the Grade, and this would be me that would know this, they did it was a kind of a joke at the time, and you would have got it back in the day, because the way Andrew Dice Clay looked back then, he had like this kind of headband on, and there was a party, and they're dancing, and he's kind of dancing to the song Far From Over. And I don't know if you guys remember this or not, but Far From Over was a song by Frank Stallone, and actually it's not bad. Sylvester Stallone's brother. It was done for the movie Staying Alive, the sequel to Saturday Night Fever. And it's kind of just put in as kind of like a joke, a wink, a throat back to the audience, because he does have that kind of Frank Stallone type look, especially with that on. And the song is one of those adrenaline songs. Adrenaline songs, by the way, are music like upbeat, like fast tempo songs that you would associate with a guy like Kenny Loggins, who would do stuff like Danger Zone and all those and like Footloose and all those songs, basically get you pumped for a movie. That's what an adrenaline song works. That's how it works. Anyway, Canon Films. Let me know what your favorite is. I hope you like this review. I'll be doing lots of different Canon films. It won't always be like these teen. This is actually probably my first teenish comedy that I've ever reviewed. But you're going to get a lot of different stuff. You're going to get some Braddock, and so you're going to get some Death Wish, and maybe some Masters of the Universe and that stuff too, because they did that movie as well. Let me know your favorite Canon film. Right now, the cup is empty. You know what time it is. It is time for tea. The giant lobster head is beckoning it. So let's get it done. And enjoy Canon film tonight. Go look at there and see how many of those movies you actually watched or that you want to watch. I'd like to know what's in your collection that's Canon and what you hope comes out in the description box.